Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
So Logan, as we close in on the Fantasy Gaming League conclusion, we are almost there. 2 more games this week to talk about. Parky's final game is in Super Mario RPG, and also Hall has completed his list with Super Mario RPG, and then Mr. Adcock has also finished his with Persona 5 Tactica. Don't know why it's just not called Tactics.
Annoys me that.
Well, I wrote down Tactics on the spreadsheet, and then I saw. And I was like, I'm sure I changed that actually, and it's not saved it. But anyway, that's not what people want to hear 30 seconds into the podcast. Let's start in order of release, which would have been Persona 5 Tactica. Actually, I think they released on the same day, but the reviews are out sooner on that. A 79 for Adcock. So he was the man gunning for Paper's top spot in the Grand Prix. Wasn't enough in the end. Does give him, at present, second spot by 2 points. So if his games start to blow a little bit more, you know, Tactica in particular may go up or down because it's still relatively early days, he may lose that second spot. But he is a clean 12 points off Paper, which means that kind of either the win against Adkins, which is all that's left now, or the actual second place will go to Paper. He's won that. So, as I think we both predicted, that game didn't have the strength to carry what he needed there. He needed the high 80s for that, which was a bit of a struggle. It's on Game Pass, so could this be a Logan game? Tactics-based game, turn-based, your favourite, isn't it?
Literally couldn't be further from what I would probably enjoy playing. So, no.
Why do you hate tactics and strategy games?
I just find them a bit bland. I mean, I don't broadly... It depends in what format. If it's like a card game where you take it in turn, it's a little bit different. But
yes, like
when they blend combat into turn-based, I just find it becomes a little bit dull. I don't know. I don't know what the ideal form is, because I have this debate. It's like, even when I'm playing like an MMO or something, like I find just the clicking nature of combat just a bit like, I don't feel like I'm doing. I don't feel like there's skill, which is slightly different in turn-based because there's a strategy to it. But yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's a very small window between. I like to feel like I am actively a part of it. If that makes sense. And I feel like, turn-based, I just select something and the character does it. I'm just an instructor.
Well, these tactics styles games, which I don't know if I don't know what the actual word is for it, but rather than it just being you choose a move from a menu and then it rolls a dice and says yep or nope, you have strategy over your positioning on the battlefield. You know, using cover and things like that. And that's still turn-based. You know, you've got maybe 2 turns per character to move them in position and maybe attack. But that does give a little bit more of a feel of you doing stuff. You've got to set your, you know, try and maybe coax your enemies into certain areas or get the higher ground and attack using certain powers or weapons. But yeah, it's not. I don't think these games are going to be a revelation if the turn-based stuff hasn't been.
I've just never got it. Like, it's just never stirred me in the right way, if that makes sense.
Unless it's Pokemon.
Yeah, but even Pokemon sometimes is a little bit like you're just playing out the inevitable.
Yeah, like, I mean, it is Nerd's first turn-based game. Like, you can get away with doing a bad job and you will not be close to being punished. But that's the one that most people forget about when they say they haven't played them. And it's not really.
I fundamentally don't even think I really enjoy that. Like, no, to be honest with you, I think I did back in the day, but I more enjoy the world of Pokemon more and like the names and like everything to do with it. I don't play it for combat. No. Like, that's just not my thing. So yeah, I just broadly just don't think it's great. It's really unfair just because I don't enjoy it. So it's not great. I think that's probably unfair, but it's just not. It doesn't tickle my senses in the brain to make me go, oh, I need to do that again.
Nope. Can't play.
Whereas when I get killed on Counter-Strike, I'm like, right, I'm going back to get this fuck. Like, that's the difference.
How often does that pan out for you? I bet it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Put down again. Do it.
Yes,
try
correct.
To fall into the same trappings. They know what they're doing.
Headshot, instant. Headshot, instant. You go,
Deagle.
right.
Isn't it? That's one of them.
That is one of them, yeah.
Glock?
Yeah, the Glock's on there.
What was that? AWP? That big fucking snipper.
Yeah, that's the one that I kept getting headshotted with. Yeah, honestly, you come up... Go on.
I was going to say, I thought that was like one shot kill, basically, even if you didn't get him in the head.
It is.
What have you got Well, if you get him in the chest, it'll just...
I think it depends because there's like body armor and stuff like that. So I don't know the exact mechanics around it. But I mean, if you ain't got anything on, I think it's like one shot from the AK, or it feels like one shot from the AK dead in the head. Right. Like you literally walk around a corner, gone. You go, well, what's happened here?
As it should be. Put helmet on, but that noisy from memory. Anyway, Persona 5 Tactica. Let's go to Game Central, and the reviewer this time is Metro Game Central, so that's Skynet's doing this one, apparently. It's not a human. No name listed. It walks the precarious tightrope where it risks disappointing both Persona and strategy fans, but most of the time this fun but shallow tactical role player threads the needle to enjoyable effect. 7 out of 10. You know, I actually might go and play this because I've played Persona 5, as we know, Persona 5 Royal. I have Persona 5 Strikers through monthly PlayStation Plus games, so that will be there indefinitely until I pull the plug on the entire thing. This is on Game Pass, and I'll probably miss the boat on it because I don't think I'm going to get round to it in the next year or so, but my plan is to, once Persona 3 is done, in January or February more likely, go back to Strikers, do that, and then do this spin-off as well, and then, you know, play the spin-offs as and when they come out for any future titles. I mean, it's a good plan, but I caught myself playing State of Decay this week too, so you can say there's good planning being done, and then that's being chucked in there.
If you gave me a list of games that I thought you'd be playing this year, I would never have put State of Decay 2 on there. No chance.
I like the first one, but...
So did a lot of people.
Yeah. I
mean, there's a reason why it fell off a cliff.
Well, look, the way I look at this one is that State of Decay 2, when it came out, certainly was not of required standard.
No.
I think it's 2018. It's been at least 4 years, let's say, minimum. They have patched the fuck out of that. This is like a not quite a No Man's Sky. I don't think it's quite added as many features as that is, you know, but more of a cyberpunk, and it's up to... It's not as good as Cyberpunk, I would probably, if I had to guess, having not played both of them fully. But it's up to a standard where it's playable at least. So if you're interested in the idea of it, it should be a decent experience. And I've had to restart it twice because of various... Well, the first time was just 10 minutes in. I just wanted to see what was going on. Yeah. And I was like, okay, right, I'll restart and choose a different starting character. Second time, I'd have that's a good 5 hours worth of progress lost.
What?
Because, well, I think it's about maybe not 5, but it's at least 3. The tutorial doesn't guide you very well about certain things. Essentially, I grew my base too much to start with and didn't have enough food coming in and beds and shit. And I needed to do other stuff because it was early in the game to get up and running.
Yeah.
I could never build up enough fucking... cachet of stuff. So I got in the right old state and I thought, you know what? This is poor. I'm going to start again. And when I looked in there, when I went to start a new game, it said, oh, you can skip the tutorial. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What does that mean? When you go in the tutorial, you get like four sets of 2 characters you can choose, like a pair, like a couple, basically. They've got a different backstory and you're like, okay, I'll choose one. They've got different stats, traits and things like that. And then it puts you through this like opening level where you meet 2 other survivors, and again they're sort of the original 4 you go with, but they're always, other than the 2 you select, obviously you can choose another pairing, but the other 2 are basically the same people, just with different names and voices, the same traits. When I looked in the way of doing it, skipping the tutorial, you pick 3 survivors and you can randomly generate them, and they can be good, bad, or indifferent. And I was like, this is better. I don't want this backstory. I don't want it. I don't want to know about this couple that have survived. I don't need it, because what happens is, over time, the game forgets they're a couple, and they won't interact in that way. At least if I have 3 unknown survivors, they will just be, whatever. It won't really matter. 3 originals, and then it's permadeath's on, so there's a good chance they'll end up dying at some point. But I like the idea of just starting out, and also it won't funnel me down these set missions I've got to do. You just start basically, and you start with the first base, and it's like, right, go and do what you want, and that would be more appealing to me rather than it trying to sort of show me what to do gameplay wise and make me do stuff that doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense for me to want to move base at that time, but because the game's tutorial wants to show you how to do it, you do it. In any case, I don't know how we got onto that, but that should have been saved for the review.
It should. I was surprised you went into that level of detail, but it's interesting to hear you talk to that, because normally with these sort of games, you like to be given a story that you play out, but actually what you've preferred to do is make your own story.
If it ain't up to snuff, there's get rid of it. And it's one of those games. It sounds fucking stupid when you say it out loud, but it is your own story type thing, because it's so dynamic in what can happen. It's quite random in what hordes you run into. Like, you can go out on just a standard mission and someone will die. If you get caught with your pants down, and it's permadeath for them. So that sort of stuff, it is one of those ones where your playthrough won't be the same as someone else's generally. You'll hit the same sort of main campaign mark because it'll want you to do certain things, but how you get there and what you do in the journey there is kind of unique. So the idea of it being completely fresh was more appealing to me this time. That's what I'll be probably playing. I don't know how long the game is. 40 odd hours, I think, if you do everything. I don't know if I'll do everything, because it's a game that sort of always generates new missions, if that makes sense, like side stuff. There's always stuff coming in, but it might be to the end of the year. I could quite comfortably just sit there and play that, because it's a nice, easy play. It's sort of
right up your street in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, it is. You can tell why it didn't score the best anyway. It's never going to get a 10 out of 10. Put it that way.
No,
it ain't got the production or the smoothness in gameplay. There is concessions you make with the game, but the idea of it is really appealing to me. I've been waiting for ages to play it, and I was like, well, let's just fucking do it.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I think that was one of the charms of the original one, though. It was kind of like
it was Walking Dead simulator. Yeah.
But you knew it wasn't perfect. It was like a little, like, I wouldn't say indie game necessarily, but it was because it felt like it had a little bit more to it than that.
I think it was to start with, and then Microsoft bought them sort of towards the end of the development. But this still feels in that element, it feels like a lower budget type thing. And State of Decay 3's been announced, and I'll be up to speed for that if and when that arrives. But it
is interesting, actually. I know we're going off on a tangent here, that Microsoft continue to produce sequels to okay games. Do you know what I mean by that? Like,
they're not like the absolute fucking King Kong of making cash or popular or even critically acclaimed. They just they like the idea of it. They probably see potential in it, and they want to go with it. Which is State of Decay 3. I was not expecting to see that announced, to be honest, after State of Decay 2, how badly it seemed to perform. But I mean, the last patch that went out of this game was about 6 weeks ago. So there's still to this day, they are fixing things and adding new things. I think they added this curveball thing, which basically adds a modifier sometimes randomly. Like the zombies get infected with a different type of strain and they explode. And, it's just weird things like that will just throw your way randomly. It's a bit much, the fucking game. There's a lot going on. You can't do everything. Yeah. You have to just get on with it and look after yourself, wipe your own arse, and then leave the others out there to fend for themselves.
What I was going to say was, I suppose you said there's no real end to the game.
Less concerning.
Well, but is this why they keep adding stuff? Because you can keep going back. They'll add a patch. You can load up your save, and there'll be something different for you to do.
I'll tell you what. I don't know this for a fact. I haven't looked it up because I don't want to know. But I think there is a a finale, like legacy mission, they call it, that kind of ties up your community's kind of end if you want to do it. Because what they actually encourage is that you start a new game on a new map and you can import your community or members of your community into the new game. So you can actually play again on a different area with the same people if you want to do that. And so it's all like a new game plus almost, isn't it? You can keep all their traits, all that shit and materials and stuff and get a foothold. I don't think I would bother doing that. It doesn't seem... I'd just probably play through whatever the final legacy mission is and do it. But yeah, it is, again, you're right though. It's kind of... It's a sandbox to a certain extent of randomness. So they need to have things happening in the world constantly to draw your attention or to, put little carrots on sticks. But we'll see. I will stick with it, I think. I was just overwhelmed when I first played it. And the tutorial doesn't do a good job of not putting you in that situation. Just sort of allowed me to hamper myself. That's not what I want. I want a nice clean start with 3 randomers and we'll grow the community from there. Anyway, this is Idle Game Chat, Dimp Digital's flagship video game podcast, completely independent, and it's grassroots over that rec football. Yeah?
Literally from the grass.
So rather than AstroTurf it all. But the environmental concerns will probably see to that. Probably a lot of
the bees, mate.
Well, are you allowed to have honey these days? Because it's cruel to the bees. If you're vegan, for example, you don't be having that honey, as far as I understand, because it's an animal...
Well, it's an animal product.
Yes. But they're going to make the fucking honey regardless, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, but that's the argument for milk and eggs. It's the argument for it all. It's going to come... It's not being forced out. Well... I mean,
well, they're not. I think it's the fact they're locked up, aren't they? Even the bees, to a certain extent, are chucked in that hive, and they're like, "We're staying here." But again, they wouldn't do it if they didn't enjoy it. Yeah, I mean, they would have done it somewhere. I mean, yeah,
they wouldn't do it if they did.
Well, they wouldn't, would they? You can't force this. You can't force them.
Nature.
Yeah, the milk you're literally extracted it from the cow,
and they've been bred for
that. Yeah.
Right. So I do get that point of it, but the milk's getting made, the honey's getting made, and the eggs are getting laid. So
the reason it's a hot topic is because of this animal cruelty. You can get like products that have like animal cruelty free on the back. There's a little like bunny, I think. Watch that fucking Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It set her off, innit?
What's that?
Well, it tells like Rocket's kind of story, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
In fact, didn't watch it all. Couldn't watch it all. Walked away from it. I had
really?
to sit there on my own.
It is.
It is unusually heavy. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
Put it on.
I remember when I was watching that, and I was kind of like, I almost felt a bit guilty.
Yes.
And I was like, my cats literally have the best life, and it's a joke. It's like ridiculous, but then it does open your eyes sometimes. This like other side of it. I mean, I think this is an absolute extreme, but yeah, you are right. So, what is there in your household a concerted effort to?
Well, we'll see. I mean, my view is I'm happy to go along with it, but as soon as I spot the inconsistencies where certain concessions are made, I'll be like, look, I'll be pointing them out. I'm that sort of person. But hang on a minute.
No caged eggs. That is a rule that I've got. I don't be having them. So have to be free range. And even that isn't ideal, I've heard. They get around that sometimes. But yeah, it's a tricky one to navigate, isn't it? How do we get onto that?
I mean, the consistent...
Grassroots,
yeah. The consistent...
Tangent.
The only consistent approach is actually like the vegan approach where you just cut it all out.
So one of the good you can get, especially around where we live, there's a lot of people that actually have chickens. You can go around the country lanes and you can get proper organic eggs for like £2 for 6, and that is the way to do it for eggs. But milk's a tricky one because how do you go about that?
Almond milk. Well, I got told those almonds are destroying some insects somewhere. I mean, again, you can't get away with a lot of this stuff.
No, but apparently if you get like soya or any of these, then the the farming and everything like that ain't great. So there's no
winning.
There's no silver bullet, is what I would say.
No.
Buy local, buy organic is the ideal way of doing it, I think. But you can't get around it in this cost of living crisis.
Nope. And if you are cost of living crisis like we are, patreon.com/dimpdigital, the free range podcast. Huh?
Families to support, animals to look after, causes to fight.
Well, look, if I'm going to go cruelty free, even the hair gel needs to be looked at. And that's going to be another £2 a pop, isn't it? Or hair wax, whatever I'm using. I might just shave my head. It's done with.
Not a problem over here.
I know. That is the title way to do it. But I do like the idea of it being a choice for me rather than it being forced upon me. I will say that.
You cannot argue with that.
No. Super Mario RPG.
Yes.
Got an 84. Oh, Persona 5 Tactica got 79, by the way. But Super Mario RPG got an 84. Now, what that means in terms of Fantasy Gaming League, it basically confirms you as the winner. Parky now sitting on 838, you sitting on 860. So good effort from Parky, but was 20 odd points off in the end, which is about where my forecast was kind of landing towards the back end. Hall was adamant that it was going to be close, but that Destiny Lightfall at 71 cost Parky dearly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's closer than I thought it was going to be originally when those games were drafted out. I was like, when you see something, you go, that should be based on my game list and what I'm hearing from that side, it should be a win. But to get it within sort of 20, 30 points, I think is pretty good going. And perhaps I underestimated some of the games that he had in his roster.
Average of 85 for Parky at the moment, an average of 87 for you.
It's quite unbelievable, really. Like,
yeah, I mean, that is a high. I'll have to go through the history books when we do the debrief and see what record. I think that's a new record score, and certainly the average will be gone as well with that. So Parky may well have got a new record as well. So even if he'd, these may be the two highest scores. I will check all this for our end of season show.
And again, really, me and Parky can't take much credit for that, but it shows. I think the competition is getting stiffer in terms of people actually paying attention and actually thinking about it. Whether that's luck or judgment, we'll see. But I think, broadly speaking, there was a couple of games that both me and Parky had to sub out. But you don't get many people taking huge risks.
No,
unless you're Adkins in the solo draft. But broadly, it seems like most people have clocked onto the fact I need to get games out. I'm going for games in that 80s range. 70s are no longer applicable. There's not many risks, I don't think. There's a couple, but I think people are taking it, I'd say, more seriously, or at least it feels like that to me, other than Hull, who's just chuffing it away.
Yeah, he's had a terrible Grand Prix, one to forget for him. In terms of Super Mario RPG, I'm going to do Game Central again and get their Skynet in, because they've got that bot doing things again. 7 out of 10. An excellent remake of a historically important game that often gets forgotten. The price is off-putting, but beyond that, this is a breezy and charming adventure that's perfect for RPG fans.
Rippages.
7 out of 10. In terms of the Grand Prix, paper is top, 794. These everyone's got all their games out other than Adkins. This is basically as final as it gets, and it's all going to come down to that day before, which we've spoken about, which might be State of Decay 3 for all we know. That's it's an open world MMO survival zombie thing, so maybe I'll be jumping on that if it's good. Don't think it's going to be. Any case, Paper's 28 points in front of Adkins. So Adkins' last game just needs 28 points. Anything will do at this rate, but as we know, he hasn't got anything that will do because he's chuffed it with that game. We're going to see how that pans out. Paper, Adcock, Biff, Salmon, Adkins, Hall is how it will end if nothing changes. So that's the order. Hall had an absolute shocker. And then Adkins, to be fair, Paper, Adcock, Biff, Salmon. If we take Adkins out of the equation here, just because he's either going to win it by a wide margin or blow it, those four are only separated by 16 points.
Yeah.
40 games. Shows how close it is. It's not a lot.
No, it's probably, or it feels like, the closest year we've had, both in terms of Grand Prix and
We ain't got a proper name. This is the problem.
Is it not?
Well, it's just called the Championship. But because of that fucking football league, that sounds lesser than. I don't like calling it that because it sounds like that shit.
I always get confused
Div
between
1.
the Grand Prix and the Fantasy Gaming Draft, the FGD, and what. I've lost track of the titles, and then I'm like, well, what am I getting wrong here?
You've got the Fantasy Gaming League Grand Prix. That's everyone.
The FGL GP.
Yep. And then you've got the FGL Championship, which is the 1v1 title showdown.
Right.
That's what it says in the belt.
So it can't even be rebranded.
Nope. Stuck with that.
Locked in.
Although we had two belts, it has changed the belt. I did buy another one.
Well, I mean, I'd say it's a waste of company funds, really.
It was.
No. I meant just in terms of doing it again.
No, it was. I knew what I was doing. But I get to make the rules, unfortunately.
Exactly. Didn't bring it to the board for ratification concerning.
No. I think I might have done.
Proper governance required.
No.
Okay. Well, yeah, anyway. I mean, it's super tight. It's super tight, other than Hull.
Yes.
But it's still amazing to me how far Adkins has chuffed this. I don't know why
he might not have.
looked. Well, he's made it harder than he needs it to be. He could have it all sewn up.
Yeah. Could have put Kong in there. It would have been enough. It'll be a blower. It will be a Gerard slipper if it ends up not coming in. So not long now. About what we got, a couple of weeks, 1, 2, 3 weeks basically. So we'll see. It'll all be handled in a number of weeks. Right, I call this the crying episode because this is the episode where we're in a post Game Awards nominations world. So the Game Awards have had their nominees announced and all the crying started. X didn't get in. Y didn't get in. Yeah. What's that doing in there? Anyway, we'll have a little chat about these.
Okay.
Game Awards. And one thing I will say, this awards ceremony is one part marketing, as we know. There's a big showcase that takes place on the same event, and one part awards. Now, the awards, as I've said year after year, is a selection of outlets across the world, media outlets or influencers or content creators, whatever you want to call them, people that are deemed relevant in the space by Jeff Keighley and his panel. They're asked to submit their winners, losers, whatever it is, and that's how it's done. It's aggregated through that voting process. So for all intents and purposes, this is kind of like the media award, the Game Media Award of the year, which means there's a really easy way to kind of look and track who's likely to be nominated as you swap over sides, which is interesting. So one thing, don't take it too seriously. No need to, is there? Like, if you don't agree with the review scores, then this is of no interest to you at all. Unfortunately, because it absolutely is going to be game media stuff. And 2, we have industry awards. We've got the Golden Joysticks. I've got the nominations for that and the winners of that coming in. That's sort of a fan-related one. We've got DICE, BAFTAs. What's the other one? Can't bloody remember now. But anyway, there's a number of other ones that are done by the industry itself. But this is the media award. This is not an Oscars peer-voted thing. And look, the Oscars aren't perfect either. So everyone puts that as the gold standard, and they say, cool, that's the most prestigious award. And sometimes you see some of the dross that gets nominated and put forward there, and you're like, what are they doing? So anyway, none of these things really matter, is what I'm saying, but they're interesting to needle at people nonetheless. One huge problem I have with this, and have done for years on years, is that it's done during the year of 2023 rather than 2024 for 2023. So you can't reflect on the entire year. There's still games coming out. Now get this one. See if you can figure this out, Logan. We've had the nominees, yeah? So we know the game of the year and all the different categories are going to be. According to their own website, the Game Awards, the closing date for a game to be considered in the Game Awards nominations list is Friday the 17th of November, 2023. And yet these were announced on the 13th of November. What are we doing? How can we be saying we're going to draw the line here when the closing date hasn't even fucking been breached? I mean, do they just... careless?
Say that to me again.
So if you want your game to be considered for Game of the Year 2023, it has to have been available for public consumption by Friday, November the 17th.
Yeah.
The Game of the Year nominees were announced on the 13th of November.
So basically what we're saying is if your game comes out on the 15th of November, you're fucked, even though it's within the criteria.
Yes. They've jumped the gun on their own closing date. It's shambolic, isn't it? It's just, I know it's a minor detail, but it really does just annoy me that, because there actually was 2 games that came out: Super Mario RPG, which has come out, and Persona 5 Tactica, plus a swath of other indie games that have been out. That could have, in theory, been considered. Now, you know, I doubt they would have got on the nominees list, to be honest, but you never know.
Well, yeah, but what I don't understand, I just don't understand it. Like, surely you'd say like the 1st of November, and then have a 2-week. Yeah. Like, I don't know why you're doing that to yourself. No. Yeah, it's weird. It's sloppy.
It's just, I don't know why no one can even just look. I don't know, no one says that and asks him, "What are you doing?" Maybe behind the scenes it's all candled. Maybe these other games that have come out this week or this past week were in some ways already considered because they'd gone off to the outlets early. I don't know. But when you write that the closing date, the last consideration date, has to be available for public consumption on the 17th, and then you've already announced your nominees on the 13th, it just makes you jar your head. Another reason why you shouldn't get too wrapped up in these things. Anyway, Baldur's Gate 3 and Alan Wake 2 lead the nominees list, 8 each. Spider-Man up the rear with 7, or Spider-Man 2 up the rear with 7 nominees. Here's the list of 6. Alan Wake 2 is the Game of the Year. Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Tears of the Kingdom. Only one new title there. Everything else is a sequel. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not commenting, I'm just pointing it out. What do you make of these 6? This might be the year I've played the fewest of what's on there. I've played 2, and I'm only likely to play 3, maybe 4 by the time we do our Game of the Year.
What ones have you played? You've played Tears of the Kingdom. No, you haven't.
No. Resident Evil 4 and Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And the other ones that are likely to get played are probably Super Mario Bros. Wonder, maybe, but more likely Alan Wake 2. That's just on the radar, and we're waiting for a slot for it to dive in when it's been on sale, because I didn't get it day one. That's the other rule.
Do you think they've missed anything? Like, how do you...
Personally, or based on... how it's the people that are. Personally, I ain't got a clue because I haven't played enough really this year. Maybe, but there's plenty of games. There are games that have scored higher that aren't in there. But that always happens. And then there's always the big. Well, there's no Xbox game again, which caused crime. And Starfield was the chosen one. That was the generational. This
is what I was digging at. Do you think there should have been a position for Starfield, or is that just because? Is it?
No. Well, look, it's the way, and it's quite simple. It's This is the Game Media Award, so it's people that have played the games that work for these outlets. If we use the tools we have available to us, which are like OpenCritic and Metacritic, to get a gauge on what their opinions have been, what they think is good, what they think is really good, and what they think is great, Starfield sitting on an 85 doesn't, on OpenCritic that is, doesn't scream to me top 6 of the year, especially when, if you do look at the rankings, the 44th best scored game of the year. So it's not in the top 10. Now, there's a lot of games in there that don't get many reviews and questionable as to why they're higher, but I had a quick scan through and it's ranked about 15th, I would say, on like games that have got 80 odd reviews basically. So it's not in the top 10, it's not in the top 50 if you go by all games. It just wasn't. I'm surprised that people are surprised at all, because it was quite divisive. IGN gave it a 7, GameSpot gave it a 7. Like, when bigger outlets like that aren't giving it 9s and 10s, it's all, in my opinion, it's always going to struggle. And it didn't. It wasn't the home runaway success, 90 plus Game of the Year caliber game that people were anticipating and or wanted. Not saying it's a bad game, but it wasn't seen as by the critics at that level. So therefore, I'm not surprised at all. And if it was on there, that would be seen to me as they're throwing Phil a bone.
Yes.
That's how I would.
And this is the point where I try not to put on my smug face, because I'm pretty sure I called this a couple of months back.
You were a bit more.
I
was bullish on it, and you were more like, "No, they haven't done anything yet." And I was like, "Well, they can't not." And they kind of fell in the middle. They didn't crap on it. They didn't crap the bed, but it didn't. It didn't garner the absolute darling. It wasn't the darling, was it?
No.
Hi-Fi Rush scoring higher. Hello.
My fear with these sort of games is that they appear at first instance to be like this open sea of possibilities, and then once you jump into the sea, you realise it only comes up to your ankles.
Yeah.
And that is always the fear, and that is, I wouldn't say that's how it's turned out, but I think a lot of people are a bit like, oh, that's not really what... I don't know whether it's because of people's own expectations, or... So I don't feel like Starfield particularly led people down a garden path to say this is what you should expect, and then didn't deliver. I think they delivered on what they largely intended to, but people got their hopes up in a similar way that I think you did, which is surely they'll do more. Like, surely this has got to be the slam dunk they need. And they sort of, as you say, they landed somewhere in the middle of that. But it was always, I think, for that sort of game, going to be a struggle for it to get into the top echelons. I don't know. Interesting conversation, but is that the maximum these sort of games can achieve? Like being like, if you released a Fallout 3 now, like, do you think there's that sort of desire in the market for those sort of games? Like, do you just think broadly they won't resonate in the same way perhaps they used to?
I think that Fallout 3, one of my favourite games ever made.
Yeah.
But it was 2008. I think this is the problem.
Yeah.
Is they haven't. This is just a common criticism. They don't age very well in terms of just mechanics and clunkiness and things like that. There's still animation, whatever it is. There's something about the BGS games, Bethesda Game Studios games, that don't particularly age very well. They're not very. The environments are beautiful and the planets look nice, but when you get up and close, there's always this level of like dirtiness almost of it. And in this game in particular, I don't know. I think it just that Baldur's Gate 3 come out, RPG, different setting, but I think that ridiculous success, 96, hello, that again exposed probably Starfield to more criticism because although they are different in many, many, many ways, there's a level of depth and choice and consequence and just the overall package of Baldur's Gate 3, I think, hurt Starfield to a certain extent. Not that it would have scored into the 90s, but it just... People kind of had their feel. It was like, this is like a watershed game. And when that happens, inevitably people see what comes afterwards and they're like, yeah, this is still good, but is it really great when you've got guys outside doing this? Not dissimilar to what happened with Fallout 4. Because that year, we got The Witcher 3. And guess what? Everyone said that's a landmark title, and it was. And then Fallout 4 comes along 6 months later, and they're like, yeah, but not, ball-busting, amazing. And I didn't like Fallout 4 as much as I liked Fallout 3, so I don't know what that says about anything. But generally, I just think there's a game in there they can do that would get it, but I know as Starfield as a setting is the one because you've kind of promised this expansive space world, which is great in some ways, but you can't fly around freely to the planets. You can't do that. There's a lot of restrictions that people have found, a lot of fast traveling, all that sort of stuff. And I think that something like a one map world or a couple of regions zone with pure density and depth would do it, where playthroughs are completely different, characters interact realistically and all this sort of stuff. Not they don't in Starfield, but I think there's just a level of creative depth that Baldur's Gate offers. That
I've seen a lot of like reels and stuff of people basically taking the piss out of Starfield characters and NPCs and stuff, and it's just a bit like bland. When you compare, I always compare it back to like, look at how you can go up to anyone in Red Dead 2 and have a conversation, and they've got a story, and they've got.
It feels alive, that world.
Yeah, and you feel like they're going about their business and they're doing something, and I really do think a lot of games underestimate or just don't have the budget to do that. But it really adds something to an open world game when you feel like the world's doing things without you. Like, it doesn't all revolve around you. You are just a part of that world. Which is a
nonsense. It's smoke and mirrors. But
it 100% is.
But it tricks you, and that's all gaming is. You're being tricked constantly.
So important.
Yeah. It's the immersion, isn't it?
Yes, exactly, yeah. And it's like, I can feel like someone's got an agenda. It's like, oh, I'll go and interrupt their little trip to the shops or something. And I think those sort of things, those little details are often what make the difference and keep the immersion there, and they can easily pull you out of it by it feeling like it's you sort of, they're like walking into a wall or something, or like, do you know what I mean? It's like you sort of all of a sudden go, oh, I'm in a video game and there's a bug or something. I think it is a really important little feature, but I don't know. As I say, I don't know what it's like exactly in. I think
Bethesda Game Studios could do it, but I think it needs a big technical upheaval for one thing, because so many games have come along and just lapped them in that area. And whilst that's not everything, again, we look at how the conversations, and I'm not even talking about what you're saying and how you say it and what people say back. I'm talking about if you watch a conversation in Starfield that you have, you come up to you, their face, they sort of talk to you. Their mouth is, it's animated well, good. They sort of just stand there. You watch a conversation with Baldur's Gate 3, zooms right down, and they're animated, they're moving. There's something about that I think that they'll need to do if they're going to play in this space. And I've talked about for Horizon Forbidden West doing that. And that's when I replayed that Burning Shore, I was like, yes, I forgot that this game did that, had that level of interactivity, had that that polish on character interactions, because these games live and die on your interactions with characters. So the more immersive you can make that, I think helps. But they absolutely have got it in their locker. It's just that we've got to wait another decade because they're not quick, these games. Well, and that might be part of the problem.
Me. Yeah,
if a game takes that long to make, you inevitably are going to come up with ideas and implemented systems and come up with restraints on a project that's maybe not coming out for 5, 6, 7 years. And by then, if something else has come along and shown a different way or a better way or a more critically appeasing way, you're going to be left behind. And I think that's a problem as well, is that a lot of these projects are a stab in the dark of, here's what we're doing now, here's what we think we can do in the future, let's hope that that's where it goes. And you sometimes games come out and you think, fuck me, that feels old. And it's like, well, it took them half a decade to make. So the ideas in it probably are all that.
Yeah, I think the only thing I was going to touch on that still did surprise me about Starfield is that the character interactions still heavily remind me of when we played ESO. And when you sort of, and I get it, that's the style, right? And I'm not using it as a huge sweeping criticism, but
crapped on it.
They are very static and sort of robotic, and I feel like they do need to do something with that to make them more real, because otherwise they'd look like robots in a human skin.
Maybe they all are. Maybe it's the big twist. It's like all meta. We're the fools for not doing it. But so Starfield, really, I'm not surprised it wasn't on there because the scoring wasn't high enough. I could clearly see you can see from the Open Critic scores, not everything, but I would argue for this award ceremony it kind of is, because it's the same people voting generally. Like it was never really going to have a shot. I don't know why people bigged it up and. Not bigged it up, so he bigged the idea of it going forward because it was a Bethesda game and an Xbox game. So that ain't how it works. If it's Nintendo, you go, they need to have at least 2 on their Nintendo, otherwise someone gets fired, I think. But Xbox don't deserved to be on there. And if you look on the scoring, it wasn't close. And this was, or is, it's not over yet, one of the most high-scoring competitive years I think I've ever seen. Like, it's just been banger after banger after banger. So in a year where...
Yeah.
Look, here's a list of games that have scored in the top 10% of all time that are just released this year. Forza Motorsport, Mortal Kombat 1, Hogwarts Legacy, Super Mario RPG, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Football Manager 2024, Blasphemous 2, Octopath Traveler 2, Armored Core 6, Humanity, Starfield, Cocoon, Final Fantasy 16's not on there, Diablo 4, Dead Space Remake, Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Stars, Dave the Diver, Street Fighter 6. They're all in that top 10%. That's a lot. Yeah. And that's actually a selection of games. Like, there's a load of other indie games in there as well that were in that list. So, look, highly competitive year. I don't think anyone's been slighted. I think those 6 on there are pretty good representation. Personally, I'm surprised Speddings is on there, just for my own experience, maybe. But again, you look at the score, 90, 91. It was always going to have a chance.
Yeah.
One of the things that have come out of this, I'll just pivot slightly, is this idea that should Resident Evil 4 Remake be considered? Now, it's a remake and not a remaster. It's not a one-to-one remake like The Last of Us Part 1. That's just a technical remake. This is built from the ground up. It uses the same setting, story, characters, but new voice acting, tweaks to gameplay, obviously, and changes to the map and things like that, and added new content as well, or original content, I should say. So not quite as significant as Resident Evil 2 to Resident Evil 2 Remake, but that was a PS1 game versus a PS4 game. So the jump was bigger. This was a GameCube game going to PS4 and PS5 and Xbox Series. But should remakes at all be considered? Or should it only be reserved for brand new original games where there's no foundation to build off?
Yeah, they should be considered. Absolutely. Because then it's like, well, should a sequel? Because they've already got the base ground in there. They've just done a new story and polished it a little bit. So, yeah, I'm fine with it. If it's, the thing is, if they release a game that's a remake and there's very little difference or no material difference, then it's not going to score very well anyway. So it won't be, people just go, why would you buy this? Just buy the original.
Yep.
But
it'll come out in the wash, won't it?
It'll come out in the wash.
Part 1, people went, well, one of the best games ever made, but we've actually already got this. So actually the remake doesn't score as well as the original because we had it.
So this is what I mean.
Even though it's objectively the best version of the game of one of the greats. Yeah,
I agree. It'll come out in the wash, and that's why I'm fine with it, because if there's enough improvement, it will come out in the review scores and the critical acclaim. They'll go, this is a way better version. Like the first game was great. This is excellent, and therefore you get a 9 out of 10 or whatever. So I think that's the way it'll always be washed through. I don't think it'd ever be a case of a few minor tweaks and they get clapped for it. I just don't see that being the outcome.
No. And then I will go back to my point. Sequels other than one of them, cause for concern.
Yeah.
Is the gaming landscape stagnating? There's no new ideas, Christopher.
There's always new ideas. Some of them just don't work. And that's just the reality. And the thing is that the game studios will always try. We spoke earlier about the fact that Microsoft releasing State of Decay 3, like they're flogging dead horses. In some, I'm not saying that is a dead horse, but they're not. They will continue to make sequels for games that aren't that great. So the Horizons, the Spider-Mans, the really popular good games that continue to get people's attention and sales and critical acclaim are going to get sequels, and that's fine because I want more of the good stuff as well. So why would I just want a game to stop? Although that being said, you got to draw the line somewhere. Like you look at Call of Duty and you go, look, stop sequeling that because this is getting out of hand. Like it's the same with TV series. You got to stop it at the right time before it gets exhausting, and that is the trick. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult to walk. I know it's difficult to walk away from a cash cow, but there has to be some sort of creative pride taken in that.
Yeah,
we don't just run this thing into the ground because then
bleed it dry, literally.
We look at that Game of Thrones. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, went off the boil towards the end. It's a universally accepted opinion. And now everyone looks back at Game of Thrones and goes, oh, it wasn't that good, was it? It's like, no, it was very, 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 very good for 80% of it, but they fucking blew it because they couldn't get their ducks in a row. Now, I don't think they oversaturated it, but they, if you blow it towards the back end because your creative process isn't as strong, then the whole series get tarnished. The whole idea of it gets...
There has to be... You have to work towards an end. And I know it's a really difficult thing. While something's popular, you want to continue with it and you want it to remain popular. But if you do that too long, people get sick of it. And it happened with The Walking Dead. It happened with various things. Which like, you've got to fucking... What are you doing? You can't just keep bringing this along. Yeah, and I think that's what sometimes, look, it's easy for me to say.
Right, Cobra Kai. Yeah?
Yeah.
Karate Kid, the new TV first few seasons of that were great. I couldn't believe this thing even existed. Like one of my favourite things ever. Now look, the last 2 seasons have been like a massive step down. I mean, I've still watched them and enjoyed them, but that should have ended a couple of. I think I've got one more season they did. I'm like, thank God someone's said getting silly now. Yeah. But they could have, if they wanted to, kept going. And but again, that'll be looked upon. Like even Adcock, who loved it as well, like got bored of the season before last, and he hasn't caught up. So you're right; they need to work towards it. And you can't just keep aimlessly creating new sequels and new seasons.
It's hard. If that was me and my job was tied up in that, I would want to, make sure that I continue to have a job and attention and finance and all that kind of stuff. So it's easy to say, but I always like the fact that if you've got a story, the one thing that I always say about why Ricky Gervais has been so successful with his series is because he has never done it for longer than it needed.
No.
For any of his stuff, it is always...
Wow, a Brent film.
The film will leave. The film we will leave. But the series, he's only done 2-3 series for all of his stuff. Yeah. And that is why it's so good, is because...
Too many stand-ups now, I'm told. He's run that into the ground.
Well, I don't mind the stand-ups. I'm okay with that.
The last one wasn't very good, I found. I was like, that's the first one. I was like, that was...
It was okay. But it's difficult. Why are you doing it,
hard to criticise his multi-millionaire who's clearly at the top of his comedy game, but we will pick holes in anything if we find a way.
But I liked when he does a series, he does 3 series or whatever, he never does it for longer than it needs to go on, even if he could do. And even if there's clamour for it, he goes, I'm done with this, I want to move on to something else. And I think he does that really, really well. And that's why, Afterlife, for example, has been so successful. And, that's what frustrates me about games, is that they don't tend to do the same thing. They go, we're releasing another one. We'll have another one. Stop it. It's like
Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, but that's still doing well.
Well, yeah, to be fair, they're always different. They're not sequels. They're always... It's just the brand.
It's the title. Yeah, it's the title. It's not the game. But, I think that's the main thing that I wouldn't say there's a lack of creative... or creativity in the gaming industry. Far from it. I think there is. Film industry is another thing, by the way. Wow. But gaming, I think generally...
Chat.
Idle Film Chat, with an E. Filem.
So Scots in it that say that.
No, it's the Irish.
Is it the Irish?
Yeah.
Celtic, aren't they?
Are they?
Well, they're part of the Celtic nation. I think there's 6 of them. I think Cornwall's part of that. It's like Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, and Jersey. Anyway, don't ask how I was even researching that. It was something ridiculous.
I didn't know that.
But
probably related to a game lore in some way.
It was to do with a wrestling game. Yeah.
Right, there we go.
I was going to make a stable of people. I didn't have enough people from Ireland or Scotland or Wales. And I was like, what can they go under what banner? I was like, the Celtic nations. There we go.
Dear me. So, I think it's okay. I just think broadly, it's okay. It's okay to have sequels, as long. Yep. But again, it will all come out in the wash. Is the point? It all comes out in the wash.
If it's 2, you don't get it. So you've got Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and Tears of the Kingdom. Who do you think will win it? if you had to take a wild guess.
I don't know. I feel like Tears of the Kingdom will.
I think if someone said to you, look, we're forcing you to bet all your money, that would be the safest bet. Just because Nintendo, Tears of the Kingdom scored super well. But I wouldn't put it past Baldur's Gate 3 just to come along and cause problems. That's what I would say.
Because it's a
those
surprise
two, isn't it?
factor.
The other four ain't got a chance. Sorry, you ain't playing in the same league as those two.
No.
So don't be sitting there if you're fucking Alan Wake and Remedy thinking you're going to pull a rabbit out of the hat. You ain't. It's going to be Baldur's Gate 3 or Tears of the Kingdom. I'll say if you're going to go Tears of the Kingdom, I'll go Baldur's Gate 3, and then that way
It really is a toss of the coin, but I just think they'll align themselves with the more, what's the word, commercial.
Well, it's more well known, isn't it? It's more of a It's got more legacy.
Popular.
I mean, although they do they might like an underdog story.
Yeah, true.
Larian coming out of the bins. So that's that. Game Awards done. And then just before we end, the Golden Joystick Awards were announced and released. So these are just like, what's this? This is the audience award, basically. I mean, again, it's fucking getting earlier and earlier because they announced it last week. So November the 10th. So we're going back a little bit here, but I don't know what we're doing in terms of that. Do it in 2024 for 23.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is just open to anyone to vote. You can just sign up and vote. I don't even have to sign up. You can just go through, click. I think it's the longest running awards show. It's been going since the 80s, the Golden Joysticks. So it's an interesting one. Anyway, PlayStation Game of the Year, Resident Evil 4. Xbox Game of the Year, Starfield. Nintendo Game of the Year, Tears of the Kingdom. PC Game of the Year, Baldur's Gate 3. And then they have what they call the Ultimate Game of the Year, which is all platforms, Baldur's Gate 3. So the people have spoken, or those that care to vote on that Golden Joystick.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 3 picking up the win for the masses. Anyway, that'll do. No other news. Probably was, but it's slowing down, thankfully.
Well, we're doing a 5-hour review of State of Decay in there somewhere, talking about animal welfare, and I'm pretty sure there's something else where we went off on a tangent. Oh, we started talking about Starfield in depth when neither of us had played it. Yeah. So that's what we can do.
Indeed. We're going to get some opinions on Cocoon.
Okay.
All right? So that's a little-known indie game. I played it, and so did Evan from Pixel Pints. So he's come through the forbidden door to talk about Cocoon.
External consultant.
Yep, just like we had McWomble on for the old Marvel's Midnight Suns. So people have got that to look forward to. Cocoon, I played it on Game Pass. He played it on the PS5. We talk about that game in depth and whether it's something you should consider perhaps giving a go. So that's what's coming after this transition. But as we always say, we'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to the Dimp digital voicemail service. Please leave a message after the tone.
Tom Adcock here, not Adkins, doing a little voice review of Baynetta 3 on Nintendo Switch. I guess I haven't played the first Baynetta, played the second and thoroughly enjoyed that on Wii U maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So I got this for Christmas. I didn't buy it myself, but once I had it, I was like, right, let's crack on. I guess if you enjoyed the second one, you'll probably enjoy this. It's that kind of typical sequel where they've got around the table and gone, right, what worked, what didn't, how can we change it? And so the action, big set pieces, they're all there. And then you basically have the ability to change into several forms, and you play as a different character at various points in the game. So they're your changes. So very sort of standard sequel fare. And it is enjoyable. I would say that the Switch seemed to be creaking a bit. Like, it did not look pretty. I played it in handheld exclusively, and Christ, I'd hate to think what it looked like blown up on my big telly. But yeah, I wasn't impressed. Performance was good though. Sort of learning to notice that more. And yeah, I mean, this is only meant to be a quick review. So yeah, Baynetta 3 gets a silver.
Here we are then, back with some game impressions. To close out this edition of Idle Game Chat, you got Apps here, and I'm joined by a very special guest. It's the Platinum Fraud himself, the Stan user, the Pixel Pints co-host, Evan. Walking through the forbidden door. Welcome. It's good to have you on again.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a couple years now, and I have to start this out with a nice beer to promote Pixel Pints, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or just drinking.
Is that what Pixel Pints is known for? Just drinking?
I'm known for that as well. Well, every time I'm on the show, it's always midnight or like 11 p.m. on a Saturday, and I'm 6 pints in. So, you know, after a while, it becomes a theme, and then you worry about what people think of you. But I think it's fine.
That's fine. What you got there, by the way? Anything nice?
Yeah, it sounds. This is like the beer chat from
I'm stealing the
Pixel Pints
segment.
episode.
I'm having it now.
I'm drinking Kirin Ichiban Shibori, which is the first press. It's just your average lager. It's
Okay.
the main kind of Kirin beer that's produced everywhere.
Lovely.
It's fine. Craft beer is expensive here because of the tax laws on malted barley. So
Yeah.
I stick to the decent stuff, not the cheap stuff.
No. If you're going to have a beer, you might as well have a nice one, I say. Don't just get piss for the sake of it because it's cheap. Although some of the pubs around here only serve piss, so you don't really have a choice, which is irritating. We are here to talk about Cocoon, which is a brand new... Is this Geometric Interactive's first game? It is, isn't it? This is a brand new studio that was set up. Small independent studio. You got Jacob Schmidt and Jeppy Carlson, who are both working at Playdead previously. And I wanted to start off by kind of asking why and how this game got on your radar, specifically because you just handed in your Game Pass badge not long ago and therefore went to the shop and bought this. Well, didn't go to the shop, went to the digital shop and bought this. So this wasn't like a... I know how it is with smaller games. You sort of see them on Game Pass, you think, I might as well just download it and play it, and it's 3 hours later and you've done it and it's fine. But you actually put hand in pocket for this, and I'm assuming it's because these guys were former Playdead developers, and therefore, I would imagine you were a big fan of Limbo and/or Inside.
Absolutely. I played Limbo years after it came out.
Same here. Yeah.
I don't know why. I got a PlayStation 3 in 2012. I was 6 years late to the game,
Yeah.
so I was broke, but loved it. You know, I often hear you talk about the palate cleanser in between the bigger games, and once you know, on Xbox 360, all of a sudden there's these small digital only games like Braid that came out. It blew my mind that I could just download a game and play it, and it's 5 or 6 hours long, and it is nice in between your bigger games. So since that time, I've always been interested in these smaller games, and I'd like to think I'm kind of a 2D platformer person at heart, just because growing up on the Super Nintendo.
Yes.
So anything that reminds me of that, where you start on the left and you start moving to the right,
Yeah.
always catches my eye. And obviously, just being derivative of Mario or something like that doesn't cut it. So seeing these games that twist it in a way, whether that's with gameplay mechanics or tone or atmosphere, especially in the case of Limbo and Inside, it's that hook where you think, you know what, this is familiar to me due to my childhood, but I've never seen a game that looks like this. So it's immediately intriguing. And so I think that's what caught my eye with Limbo, and especially Inside
Yeah.
was the game that took what I thought about Playdead to a whole nother level. I think Inside is probably within my top 20 of all time. I might be able to argue it in my top 10. I think it's that good.
Yeah.
I know that team takes its time. I believe between Limbo and Inside, what was it, 6 years, something like that?
Yeah, they're not. They don't just dump them out quickly. They take their time with these, and usually what's delivered, at least in the two cases we have been excellent.
And I believe this game was 6.5 years in the making. So yeah, to answer your question, because you put from people behind Inside,
Yeah.
anything like that from the game designers specifically of Inside, then you've hooked me immediately. So not only is it like this small, interesting looking indie game that I want to play in between the big games, but it's also from former Playdead designers or devs. So yeah, the second I saw it it was about a year ago in one of the summer shows.
I feel like I saw it at like the Xbox showcase either either in 2022 or maybe even 2021, and noting really that it wasn't really the look of the game. It was, there's a couple of Playdead people over there. That was the hook, and I actually didn't pay any attention to what the game looked like because I'll talk about it a bit later. When I booted it up, I was a bit shocked that it wasn't a platformer. I was like, this is a puzzle game.
You didn't see any footage?
Well, I had done, but I'd forgotten what it was. All I saw was Playdead developers and was like, this will be the same as that. And then as soon as I booted it up, I was like, this is isometric and there's no jumping around. What's going on here? But I adjusted. Do you think if it didn't have that tagline of from the makers of Inside and Limbo, that it would have just fallen down the back of the sofa somewhere and not been picked up? Or do you think Cocoon, just in the way it looked, you may well have seen it and gone, that looks interesting enough for me to give a go for?
I mean, I think anyone who pays attention to the indie space as kind of broad brush is what does that mean? But I think if I say that, people know what I'm trying to say. Anyone that pays attention to that space, I think, would be interested in playing this game. And I think they knew that they had their hook because, well, at first it's kind of this top-down puzzle game, but then the hook of the worlds between worlds where it switches, I think immediately people are like, all right, I've never seen that before. I would like to know more. And I think I mean, it's so polished. That trailer was beautiful, and it told you everything you needed to know about the game. So for me personally, even if it didn't say Playdead, it was on my radar just from how visually stunning it was, even before they showed the main mechanic of the game.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, what helped massively for me as well is when the review scores come out, I was like, this is not a Somerville, where it came out much softer, and you actually played Somerville, which is interesting, and had some issues with it. And I skipped over Somerville. I was like, well, I'll get to that later on. Whereas Cocoon, I was like, no, I'm going to make the time to do this. As soon as my next major game's finished, I'm going to dive straight in, because this will take a week, if that, to do, because I knew it wasn't a particularly long game. I think I clocked in a good 4.5, 5 hours, though, so I didn't speed through it. But yeah, it's helpful to have that. But you know, you said you played Somerville earlier this year and wasn't overly impressed, so it can get doesn't guarantee that you're going to have an enjoyable experience regardless of who's behind it.
No, I mean, you can immediately establish an interesting look to a game and a tone that Somerville had immediately, but not all ex-Playdead developers' first games are created equal, because I thought the last third of that game was pretty bad. And even with something like Planet of Lana, which is an Xbox game, which is one reason I bought my Series S, I was very disappointed with most of that game, despite a lot of it just being a beautiful game, interesting set pieces, interesting puzzles. But I don't know, it's like a lot of games for me are death by 1,000 cuts, where little things will happen. It's like, I don't like this mechanic, and I hyper focus on it, and then it just builds and builds, and I kind of lose my temper. And Somerville did that for me, especially with the end of the game. It was awful. Yeah. Terrible ending to that game.
Are you getting hyper focused on all the Spider-Man 2 bugs that you're experiencing? Are you noticing every little little bug now. You're like, hey, I just saw that pop in there, and then Peter Parker's bike goes through the through the road, which I saw earlier. You posted.
Yeah. I've never been to New York. Maybe that's what happens there. Just I heard a story of a girl falling through the sidewalk through a giant hole and landing in like a pile of rats.
Oh,
Sounds fucking awful. So you never. I mean, maybe it's realistic. Maybe that's happened to everyone. I haven't checked online, but no. I mean, Spider-Man 2. What can you say? It's pure fun.
yeah.
So it's a bit like the third time around, technically the fourth, if you want to include the DLC from the original game. It's like, all right, I want Insomniac to do something different. I'm good with this being a trilogy. I really don't need to see any more Spider-Man games unless they do the horror thing and throw it in space or whatever. But I've seen New York
Yes.
several times now. I think I'm good.
Yeah, I don't need to visit anymore. I don't think I've swung around everywhere, so I've
I don't think I
basically
need to visit at all.
No, that's it.
Right.
All done.
It's a poor man's, New York trip.
So Cocoon, I want to read out just a little bit from the store page, and I usually take a glance at these, but I didn't with Cocoon, and then I found myself surprised at some of the bits that are in the game. And if I just read this, took 2 seconds, I would have not been surprised. But here's the lead-in part from Jeppy Carlson, the lead gameplay designer of Limbo and Inside. Cocoon takes you on an adventure across worlds, within worlds. Master world-leaping mechanics to unravel a cosmic mystery. Now, I will say there's a mystery indeed, and it's still a mystery to me exactly what's going on in Cocoon. Interesting that Jacob there didn't get a shout out. It's just Jeppy. He's not mentioned once in this little store page. So
I guess people don't care about the music of a game as much, fortunately.
No good. Worlds within worlds. Cocoon is a unique take on the puzzle adventure genre, where each world exists within an orb that you carry on your back. Very descriptive there of the actual game. That seems, normally you get like marketing speak to fluff it up. They're literally just describing what you do. You pick the orb up and put it on your back. It's like, okay, you didn't even try and make that sound any more interesting than it is. Wrap your head around the core mechanic of leaping between worlds and combine, manipulate and rearrange them to solve intricate puzzles. And it talks about alien machinery and other devices, orb abilities, and then the monstrous guardians that are there that you can fight in fierce battles. Each fight is unique and requires you to master a new and satisfying mechanic. So there's quite a lot of information there to go off. I want to start with the atmosphere in this game, because I think we've got two different opinions here, which is good. I don't know if it's necessarily a negative, but one of the things that I never really got on board with was the atmosphere of this game. I think because I'm trying to compare them to a great like Inside, which is just oozing with it, and Limbo. But for me, the atmosphere didn't suck me in. But I feel like you had a different experience and enjoyed what was being offered from this perspective. And I wonder if you could expand on that and show me the error of my ways.
Yeah, I just think all of the design of the game has a symmetry to create, well, the game itself. So you're talking about the art design, kind of very simple, lots of flat textures. They really focus on specific colors for each of the world. They don't go crazy with it. Then you have the sound. A shout out to the guy's name that I forgot and was not in the blurb. Man,
He's gone. He's forgotten
he's
now.
Pissed.
No, he's gone.
He's fucking gone.
He only put 49% into the funding at the beginning. That's why.
But the next
Jeppy did 51%.
Idle Game Chat news.
Yeah.
Jacob Schmid leaves Geometric Interactive to form his own sound design studio. But then you have the sound design and the music, which reminds you of Breath of the Wild, because sometimes it's not there and sometimes it is, and when it's there, it makes it more powerful because of the negative space that the silence creates, and lots of the simple animations. And I think that all combines to just create an atmosphere of an eerie, desolate, kind of lonely world where, like, the game starts with the thing you control, this little moth-like.
What is it? Is it a moth, man? What is
I think
he?
it's a moth.
What are you?
I'm guessing it's a moth because moths, or it could be some
Butterfly?
sort of butterfly because of the cocoon. So it emerges from a cocoon. So there's thematically already there's the idea of birth and even rebirth in terms of metamorphosis of butterflies, and the idea of kind of the creation of life, the creation of worlds. And you're kind of, at least in my analysis of it, you're starting out in this place that is either being made from the ground up or is being remade, to where you can kind of see hints of where life, like early life, and you are tasked with helping, pushing, nudging that world along to evolve and move into its next phase. You're kind of nudging it in a way, and I don't know. I just think the look and the art and the sound design of the game does help create this idea of this kind of lonely atmosphere where, you're kind of exploring this world and trying to push it into its next stage of metamorphosis, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
That sounds very pretentious. It is
Wow.
Annapurna, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, they're the ones that published it. That's all they publish. So.
The A24 of video game publishers, right? So
one thing that I also felt was, and this is just a personal thing that I kind of need, is some sort of narrative hook. Now, I recently have been playing the Little Nightmares games, and they don't really have a narrative either. But by virtue of the setting, i.e., you're in a hostile environment, you know, at just a fundamental level, you can get on board with, I need to escape and get out of here and move. Whereas with Cocoon, I never really knew really quite what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I'm not sure even when it wrapped up, I quite understood. And I haven't gone on Wikipedia and read up what it was supposed to be. I've just refused to do it. I know there's obviously a double-edged sword there. You don't want it to be too blunt and too obvious and literally spell out what's going on. But how did you find the narrative part of this? Did you get on board with it? Was it something that you wanted to do further reading afterwards to try and understand your interpretation of it? Or was it quite clear to you as you was going through? Or, you know, some of these games, especially with Inside and Limbo, you're never really quite sure what's going on. And you kind of left to make your own assumptions when you get to the end.
can I ask you a question before I answer it?
Sure.
How did you feel about the ending of Inside, or like kind of the overall, like the story, that the quote unquote story that they produced?
I think did I understand it fully? Probably not. I mean, that game gets wacky. I'm just thinking about now what transpires. But I think in a similar sense to Little Nightmares, there is just a goal of escape, or to get out of wherever we are in that place. And I obviously didn't get that with Cocoon. It's a different kind of setup. But even at just a level 1, elementary level, I could attach myself to that goal and understand why I'm going from left to right on the screen. And it is just that fundamental. And in terms of what happens and goes on, yeah, there's lots of intricacies, there's lots of further reading and depth to it. But just the general one source goal of escape was kind of enough. I can move on and go, yeah, well, even if nothing else, that I understood to be part of the goal, even if there's a lot of other advanced things going on, sort of subliminally.
Okay. All right. So with the story in this game, I think like not every story needs to be told in the same way, obviously, right? And I think with the Playdead games like Limbo and Inside, it's leading you towards you at the end of the game, there are things that are concrete, but they purposely leave it up to you to come to your own conclusions on a lot of aspects of those games. And I remember thinking about Inside and Limbo, and Limbo's a bit easier to understand, I guess, just the name.
Yes.
But like what Inside was about, what like all the things that were happening, what's the story, And I went online and I watched all these video essays about it, and a lot of what was in there was, I was like, okay, yeah, that's kind of the ideas that I also had. And then they kind of pieced together things that I may have forgotten, and then I was satisfied with that. And I think with a game like this, I'm not so hung up with just due to the nature of how it doesn't really, there's no dialogue in the game at all.
No, yeah.
It doesn't tell you what's going on. By the end of the game, and you're going through this process from start to finish, you can kind of decide what everything means to you and come to your own conclusions. And I think that's fine. That's totally satisfying. And you didn't look anything up, but I kind of thought about what it all meant. And I looked up a video that I'm so sick of these ending explained videos. And all they do is explain what they do such a bad job of it. There's not all of those videos are created equal either. And but I found a couple of good ones. I'm like, okay, that's generally what I thought was happening. But again, like I'm not I might not be right, and the person that made that video might not be right, but maybe they're both true, because even the developers didn't really have a story set in stone. So and I think that's probably purposeful, because what the conclusion I came to and all the other people that I've read about is generally hitting the same notes. So then, okay, then maybe it's more thematic than an A to B type of story, and I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. Let's talk about the actual puzzles and exploration and what we're getting up to, because I think that is the core of the game. All the atmosphere and story aside, this is an out and out puzzle game. There's no platforming to speak of. There was a lot more, what I would say, timing based puzzles that I wasn't quite expecting. I.e., you hit a switch and have to run around and get to another area before the switch mechanic runs out of time just to maybe move a platform or something. And it does a good job of teaching you that's going to happen, because it happens quite early. And I was like, oh, I'll keep this in my back pocket, because for some reason in my head, I always forget about those being part of the puzzle design. But this is a very interesting, and at times I almost got. I'll tell you what I did. I'll tell you what I think was good, and this is for a complete brain dead individual like myself. I never got really stuck. Almost certainly after a couple of minutes, I figured out what I needed to do, and it was all about how I get there. And they've done a really masterful job of, in my opinion, again, this is completely unique. Someone may well have got stuck on the first puzzle and then turned it off because they never did it. This is always the perilous thing about discussing kind of puzzle-based games. There kind of is no good and bad puzzle, because the individual might get it right or wrong. But I really had a good time. It made me feel kind of smart sometimes, managing to work through it. Nothing felt too easy, and nothing felt stupidly, obnoxiously hard, which is kind of a good balance to strike, at least for me. And it's a difficult one that not a lot of games get right. But given it's the core mechanic of the game, we've got this worlds of inner worlds. We've got globes being put on our back, as they describe in the description. How did you find this?
Literally, the world is on your shoulders. It's very,
yes.
Yeah, very direct.
How did you find this part of the game? Because this is the meat and potatoes of it, and it will make or break people's experience for sure.
Right, and we talked about atmosphere and all these things, and look, that can only take a game so far. So if you don't like puzzles, I don't think you're going to like this game. Or if you don't like, if you're a person who likes puzzle games but don't like the puzzles in this, then yeah, it's just not going to be for you.
Only like Captain Toad Treasure. So who the hell said that? Which is an
amazing game in and of itself. But
yes.
But so Jeppe Carlson was the lead gameplay designer for Limbo and Inside.
Yeah. And
I remember in the credits, he's one of two people credited with the game design, and the one person credited with the puzzle design. So judging from the scrolling credits of the game, he is the single person who designed all of these puzzles.
Wow.
And talk about a very short, but I mean, 10 out of 10, 5-star to 5-star list of games in terms of gameplay and puzzle design, I think. And I'm actually not that much of a puzzle gamer. I've only kind of recently discovered that I like very specific kind of puzzles. Like Burkhoff turned me on to the Talos Principle, which is a very different puzzle game that I know when I saw the reviews of it just seems so overwhelming that I wasn't even going to play anything like that. But I got into it, and it's great.
Yes.
But that game is also like you will stare at a puzzle and have to stop and walk away for like a day to come back while your subconscious works it out.
Yes.
And like you said, this is not that game. And I just I read a couple articles with Jeppe Carlson is talking about how he approached puzzle design, and it seems like one of his main philosophies is keep it simple. Don't make the puzzles overly complex, while also making the player feel satisfied with such a simple puzzle because they figured it out themselves. And you think like, well, that's easier said than done. That sounds like you're going to get mad that it's so easy, but no, there's something about these puzzles where you still feel smart, even though in some of the puzzles you'll just be walking and you can, because the camera's zoomed out, right? It's top down. You can see all of the parts of it and know exactly what you do the second you see them, but it's still satisfying to do it. And that's like dodging lasers. It's an insanely hard thing to do, but it's even harder to put into words like why it works, but it totally does. And it also does such a good job of slowly feeding you the way that puzzles work. And I don't know if this has happened to you, Otaps, in games where sometimes it's unbalanced how they drip feed you stuff, to where there might be a specific mechanic that let's just say in World 2 that you were introduced to, but then you didn't do puzzles like that for long enough that in World 6 you forgot that was a thing you could do, and that's why you got stuck on that puzzle.
Yeah.
This game does not do that.
No.
It keeps adding stuff and reiterating it all the time and I think that's part of it, to where like you keep remembering what you need to be do, or at least everything in your arsenal.
Yes. Yeah.
There was one part that I got stuck on that I think most people didn't, and I just forgot. I'm like, oh, I can go in a world and then come back out with something. It was one of those things, and that was totally me. But it does a good job of reminding you of all the things that are possible.
Yes.
At all times, and I think that's one reason why you don't get stuck on the puzzles. And I would love to see a hour-long documentary of Carlson explaining how he approaches puzzles, and he would explain it obviously better than we're doing, but there is something there to where in the back of your mind it's like this just works. This person has figured out how brains can succeed and be satisfied with even complex looking yet simple puzzle design.
Yes, it's definitely a bit of magic. It's not by accident that people generally are having a positive experience of this, because it's designed so well, and there's very simple things that they do to help you out. Initially I was really bothered by the fact that it kept cutting me off. Like I'd go from one part of a world to the second part on, like, say, a platform, and then I couldn't go back. So there's collectibles like these moon ancestors that maybe we'll talk about a bit later, but I knew I'd like miss those throughout my first run because the game cuts you off. And initially I was like, oh, why is it? Let me explore the whole world. But actually, when you want to go from A to B to C to D and get through the puzzle elements and onto the next world, the fact that it constrains you to the area where you need to be really helps out, so you don't waste time backtracking and going somewhere that's not relevant to your journey. You don't get lost trying to figure out a puzzle that doesn't exist. You're always in and around in the proximity of where you need to go and how you need to get there. So that's something that initially I was a bit frustrated with, because I knew I was missing collectibles and whatnot. But as I went through the game, I was so thankful of that, because the amount of games that give you too much freedom and you end up going around in circles going, I don't really know where I'm supposed to go or what I need to do. Something like The Witness, I remember starting that, and it's just this big open world, and you're like, what the fuck? Where do I even start for this? And this is the complete opposite to that, and I was really grateful for that.
Yeah, and I couldn't remember. I was trying to explain like, oh, some of this puzzle design is like, it just works, but you're totally right in a very specific aspect, to where you'll pass a threshold and the platform you came on moves away, or
it.
a wall will simply come up. And basically that's telling you like, look, you have everything you need in front of you to solve this puzzle.
Yes.
You can't go back because you need to solve this puzzle first. And there was actually one point where I thought the game had glitched. Like, I can't solve this. And I'm like, oh, no, I totally can. And then from that point on, I knew it's like, no, the game is telling you, you have everything you need to solve this puzzle because you can't go back to this.
That's it.
This previous area until you solve it. And the worst puzzle games like The Witness, which I fucking hated. I know Jonathan Blow is a genius and I loved Braid and all this, all that type of stuff. But when you teach people how these puzzles work, maybe 5 of them, and then you open up the entire world.
Yeah.
Like, I went all the way to the left. I'm like, and you know, I solved the puzzle and then I went over by this boat and there was a new element to the puzzle. I'm like, do I have what I need to solve? I don't know if I have what I need to solve this.
Yeah.
Now, if I went into this area and I turned around and the door shut, that would tell me, yes, you do.
Yeah.
But I had no fucking clue. And you move so slowly, like it's everyone fucking gone to the rapture, right? And you waddle over to this other puzzle. It's like, do I notice? And then like, I'm not going back there.
No.
It's like, fuck this game. And I just deleted it. So I'm just, it's very considerate to the player. So we're like, no, you got what you need. Just relax and think about it. So I was very happy with that little nudge to let you know that stay here, think about it, figure it out.
And you get it. Also, if you are concerned about exploring the world more and getting all the collectibles, it has one of the most granular checkpointing and reload systems you'll find in any game. You can literally move per percentage to each of the different areas of the game. So I assume you went back. You got the platinum, did you not? Or are you working towards it?
Yeah. So one of the big things is you have to. There's these, and again, this is the art design where they'll place little things to nudge you towards, and it's just outside of the screen. There's nothing very like in other puzzle games. Like there's no way I would have figured out that was a hidden room in this space. It's like, no, there's these hidden moon ancestors that you can unlock, but the road to get to them has a very specific kind of black like obelisk with a square on top of it.
Yeah.
And it'll lead you towards this path, and usually just outside of the view or just on your peripheral, you'll see one of them. Right. Oh wait, and then you go that way, and then the camera will follow it, and you'll go down that path. And they place them just outside to where if you're focusing on the path ahead, you might not see it. But if you're kind of looking around, it's not that hard to find it. Which again, I appreciate. It's simplicity, and you feel satisfied that you like. Oh, I saw that. I paid attention, and now I'm rewarded with it. But at the end of the game, like to find all the ancestors, each one has a trophy.
Yes.
And at the one area of the game, I'm not going to say what it is, but it kind of shows you like what you have missed and where.
Yes. Yeah.
In a very like it shows you what area of the game that you need to get to, but not necessarily the chapter. So I cheated slightly. I know you're disappointed in me, fast traveling and all these types of things. But
that's fine in this game. That's a reload, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're just basically reloading to an earlier stage of the game, then you can hit the trophy. And can you go back forward to any part of the game as well? It doesn't like sever your progress to like 20%, and then you have to like earn it all again.
I'm not sure if it does it before you beat the game, but once you beat the game, you can go back to any node. There's like a node that signifies a chapter.
That's it.
But it doesn't say like chapter 1, chapter 2, and it goes in a complete circle.
Yes.
And there's bigger nodes that signify boss battles and the changing of the worlds. And basically, I followed a guide that just said in chapter 2 there's a boon ancestor.
Yeah.
But there's no, so I had to count myself. It was like chapter 19, and I had to start from the first node and count all the way up to 19, go in there. And then I figured it out almost immediately because the game is very clear, like, hey, no, there's something over here type of thing. So
yeah. Just for reference, I've got no problem with people looking up for trophy cleanup. Because some of the trophies are so up their own arse that you would never get the platinum unless you did that. It's more about them just going through that first experience of the game. I want to try and organically experience it. Once it's done, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not going to find all these fucking hidden things that you've put under grain of sand that it's on the far left of the map. So having
you did get the you did get the God of War Ragnarok platinum without even looking up a single thing, didn't you?
I did, but that was, I mean, the amount of time I spent to do it. But I mean, yeah, I would guess so. But that was more out of just stubbornness. I mean, there's no reason for me to do that.
Sure, I'd like to thank you though, because I was at my wit's end with a single Raven I couldn't find, and I knew that you didn't look any of those up. And the back of my mind was, if OTAPs can do this, I can do this. And I finally found that fucker, and I feel better for it that I didn't look anything up.
Yeah,
but anyways,
if I remember correctly, in God of War, they did quite a smart thing where it tipped you off at the location of the Ravens. That would say like 1 of 2. So I think you would know where, at least what map it was on, and where to kind of roughly explore. Again, it was kind of
sectioned off.
That's
even on a single map.
Correct.
They sectioned it off to It was smart about it.
Again, it's going back to what Cocoon did, where it communicates to you, you just need to be here to progress. And that was, if it hadn't done that, there's no chance in hell, because on God of War 1 they were just all over the place, and I was like, yeah, get me a guide for that. It's just, I watched someone's video, which was not the best thing to do, because obviously they were just throwing the axe and hitting it first time. And some of those flying fucks, it would take me like 40 minutes. I was like, there's no way this dude did it one shot at it, but that's the beauty of it.
The classic. This is very easy to get, and then you try it 18 times.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You got anything else to say on, I guess, the core puzzle side? And we'll get on to like the Guardians, which are a nice wrinkle to add to the game, to sort of bookend some of the major chapters. But is there anything else about the design or the core kind of experience that you wanted to shout out?
I will say I'm almost slightly disappointed that the game didn't cleverly hint at where which chapter the moon ancestors are in the menu, to where what we were referring to before is you can go to the menu and there's a giant circle of nodes, and each one is a different chapter showing you a percentage of how far you've progressed.
Yeah.
I thought maybe there would be like a very small node next to each chapter hinting at that's where the
little symbol or something.
Moon ancestor. Well, because I was trying to think, I'm like, oh, I bet you there's a hint in this menu, and I was trying to look for it, and there's nothing there. I'm like, oh, that would have been nice if like I didn't have to look anything up. I just saw like, these are where the moon ancestors are, but there's nothing like that. But just in terms of just general art design, I just, we're progressing towards hyper realistic looking games, and look at something like Spider-Man, and I love like Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Brothers Wonder both got such high scores because they're so different.
Yes.
One's on the Switch, which is an awful system. I love the game. I love some of the games Nintendo makes, but goddamn, does that system make the games look horrid. But you have a technical marvel. I know a technical marvel, Spider-Man 2, and a fast travel that takes a single second, that goes from the map and populates turns the 3D map into the city as it zooms down.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. And then you get a game like this, it's like, no, like art design can be just as impactful and important when you have a smaller budget and in all of these things. And I just love the look of this game and how they do a really good job of creating a different feel for each of the worlds that you're in, and that's down to first. And I think it starts off simply too. It's like, first we do color,
yes,
orange, gray, green, purple, and then from there maybe it's like, oh, what does that mean? And it's simple polygons with maybe just like a bit of a gradation to them, and that's it. But they do just a smart job with the design and the look of the world and the creatures, and again the sound design and the little sounds that the creatures make. It all just makes the world feel alive, even though the game is not turning my PlayStation 5 fan on, or even my Pro, the Jet Engine Pro, PS4 Pro. I don't think it would have pushed that system. But like, that doesn't matter when you have something that is just, it's like a Wind Waker. Like the GameCube version of Wind Waker still looks good, and it's just because it's they just paid attention. The limitations made them work really hard to create a clear design that just it's timeless in a way. And I know indie games kind of do this, but it totally works in this game. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm
the art direction.
The ultimate kind of praise for that is it probably runs well on the Switch, proving that it doesn't require any level of horsepower, as we just referred to. It's
I will say, how about when switching in and out of those worlds? You think the Switch can handle that? I think that thing will fucking explode.
Might do. Yeah, there's maybe that would tax it, but it probably takes a bit longer. Although the cartridge speed, the load times are quite bad actually on the Switch. When I was playing, I mean, last game I played was Breath of the Wild, and that was probably about a year ago now, and I was like, kept dying, and I was like, this reminds me of Bloodborne a little bit, sitting there. That was the worst. That was like a 19 fucking seconds long, and I was like, what is this? Remaster that game, Sony!
Everyone wants it. Unsurprisingly, Carlson had said that to get the switch between worlds, which if you want to talk about a one technical marvel in this game, as much as I talked about the simplicity, is that animation of moving in and out of the worlds. It looks so good. It looks so good.
Yes.
And I read an article. He said that was really fucking hard to do, and it looks like it.
Yeah,
it's impressive looking.
One thing I did get, and I can't remember if it's when you jump into the worlds or some other interaction, but I was getting fed up having to hold the button down for one of the interactions. I can't remember which one it was. I was like, can't you just let me press this now? I think it was jumping into the worlds, but the animation was so nice that it kind of was satisfying. But I remember having to hold that A button on the Xbox.
Yeah, when you put the orb into the space and then it reflects in the water, and you do have to hold it down for a little too long. Yes. And the reason that it's an issue is because due to the nature of it being a puzzle game, you're experimenting because you don't know exactly how the puzzle works. So you're like, this isn't what I need. You get out of the world. Wait, no, I think I need to go back into there. You have to hold the button down again and just all right, can I just press the fucking button?
Yeah. I've got to go back in there with something else now and come back out again. You're like, I know I've put it in the wrong place. There was definitely a few chains where I was a bit like, come on, just let me press this. But that's a complete minor quibble. These monstrous guardians shocked me, as I said, because I didn't read anything about the game. I hadn't even looked at it. So when I was chucked into, a boss battle, for lack of a better term, I was like, oh, this is a wrinkle I wasn't expecting. I think they're a net positive for the game, certainly. I got a bit frustrated. This is just my patience level of getting to the third phase, then getting hit once and being booted back out and having to go back in and find the boss had regenerated. I was like, well, come on. What are we doing here? I've now got to go through the two boring stages again, only to get hit for a third time in a row. So there is that cycle of frustration, but that is just a patience thing. But generally, this was a nice way to sort of bookend key moments in the game, and they weren't just there for the sake of things. They actually had some interesting mechanics that, over the course of what is quite a short boss battle, we're talking a few minutes really, but they do evolve from phase 1 to phase 3. There's an evolution of the mechanics. They ramp up the difficulty, they rank up the complexity just enough so that it is an interesting run through. What did you make of their inclusion here?
Yeah, I loved them. And do you generally stay away from kind of teasers and trailers for games?
There's a certain point where I mean, for this game, I wasn't tracking it. As I said, it wasn't really till the reviews come out so strongly. I was like, well, I'll dive into it. At that point, I'm like, do I need to see anything? No, I think I understand that it's a shortish game, as we say, as a palate cleanser, and I'll dive in. But there's other games where I've sat there and watched every bit of pre-release footage and been like, oh.
Sure.
But I assume they were they were signposted in there.
Okay. So, yeah, immediately when the teaser came out, I'm like, I'm gonna get this game. And I didn't watch anything else about it. So you, I did not know that there were boss fights in this. And again, I thought it was a great bookend to each section of the game. And one thing I appreciate, and again, it's just this Carlson, Jeppe Carlson, this guy, he understands that sometimes having fun is more rewarding than it can be equally as satisfying as like a challenging aspect of the game.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the same thing with the puzzle design. It's like it's not overly complex, but it's still satisfying. And here the boss fights are not overly complex nor hard, but it's like the process of that 3 seconds it takes to guess like, okay, well, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Okay, I know what I need to do. That's all it takes, and that's enough. And like you were saying, like each boss fight, one thing that it's really, really smart is I don't know if it's for each of the boss fights, but one particular boss fight, the boss fight won't activate, the boss won't activate until you do something that turns the boss aggro, but then again, you have to use that to hurt the boss later in the game or later in the fight. So it's letting you know, like, look, this is how you fight this boss. It's just, it's so simple, but yet it works so well. And they'll add, you know, it's like the second part of the boss fight, they'll add another aspect to it. Okay, I see what you're like. Most of this game, boss fight or otherwise, you see the second you see something, it's like quite clear like where it's going. Like, okay, I see what this is going to be, but it's still fun to go through the entire process.
Yes.
And I did enjoy that. I got kicked out of a boss fight once, and that was the first one. Sorry, you know, platinum fraud, no more. Just really good at video games now. No, but yeah, I just thought, I don't even know if we want to say what it is. One thing that I did not like that is not necessarily a boss fight, but it happens towards the end of the game. It has to do with a ability that you get to where you have to aim and hit something. And if you take too long, it kicks you back to the start.
Yes.
If I had to say anything negative against this game, I think that was like, don't time this shit.
No.
One thing that this game does is there's very few timing puzzles. I hate when you have to pull a lever and it's 10 seconds to get to the doorway. It's like, okay, I know what I need to do, but I accidentally like hit the wall and that was enough time for the door to close, so I have to go back. Don't fucking put puzzles like that. And they don't do this, but then at the end of the game, there's this timed section. I just don't understand why they decided to put that in there.
And it wasn't even just timed as well. It's actually, I'm not saying it was like fucking Elden Ring trying to do it without getting hit, but there was a level of precision that was required that simply wasn't really required throughout the game, because it's a puzzle game. It's not really got many action kind of mechanics to it. Yes, the boss fights have an element of that, but the level of precision that you needed and timing, and the fact that you're on a time limit because it will restart, you know, even if you're at the final phase, you have to go back to the beginning. That was definitely, when I was going through that bit, I was like, right, what you done this for? This didn't need to be, it didn't need to have the time limit. It could have just been me trying to fire the projectile and trying to hit what I needed to hit. And if it took me half an hour, we stayed in that same spot for half an hour until I did it. Not, you've got 30 seconds to get through it, or you're going to go back to the beginning. It's like snakes and ladders, and it really, you hit that snake and you go all the way back to the start, and I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. Because you know what you need to do, and it was just an execution problem. Right, and as you just said, the reason that it's bad is because it betrays the design philosophy of the entire game. Yeah. There's no part of that game that punishes you, and there's no other part of that game that's like that. Yeah. So, why start adding something new and then punishing the player for it when that was not part of what the game was teaching you throughout? Yeah. Again, it's not be all end all, but no. I was quite annoyed at the first part of that. Yeah, I would imagine people looking up impressions, that's a common complaint that people would have with it, because it does feel somewhat out of place compared to the rest of the game. Yeah. It's just a bit of a strange inclusion, but we got through it, so there's always something to say about that. Anything else? Any other business? Any other comments that you had about Cocoon before we head over to the gaming gallery and decide how you're going to rank it? But anything we've not covered that you'd like to speak on? There's one thing I'd actually like to ask you, and this is something I hadn't really considered until I heard it brought up on a podcast. One of the criticisms from this person on this podcast said, like the puzzle, as we talked about, the puzzles are simplistic, but then towards the end of the game, you start having to go in and out of worlds a bit more. Yep.
and they had argued that they wish there was a bit more of that. Like,
Throughout the
it's like
game.
the final 15% of the game is probably a bit more layered in Inception, like.
Yeah,
and
Inception
they
is a good-
argued. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I understand what they're saying in that it does ramp up, but I don't know a video game that doesn't ramp up like that and crescendos with, trying to go out of a bang almost. And I can see why in a puzzle setting that's frustrating, because it can break your momentum and make you start to feel stupid, and that's the difficult line that these guys are trying to straddle. I think it wasn't so much of an increase in requirements that I was completely lost. Like you do it enough times at maybe 1 or 2 levels earlier in the game that again teaches you that this is a thing you need to be aware of. And continually, as you mentioned back at the beginning, throughout the game, you're continually sprinkled with these requirements. And it's just that towards the back end, like many video games, you're kind of putting the whole thing together. You're putting everything you've learned together about one of the very core mechanics of the game, which is going, as you said, Inception, layer-based, world within a world within a world. And you're putting that all together. And yes, it's probably might feel a bit clumsy to people, but I was kind of okay with that, because that was like that's what you've been kind of working towards and learning for the last sort of 3 to 4 hours in the game.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. They did a good job of balancing that, and they didn't make the end of the game overly complex or add too much of the Inception stuff in it. I think even in one of the interviews, Carlson had said like they actually scaled back the idea of the world within world stuff, because he realized like he doesn't want to make a game like The Witness or the Talos Principle. There has to be more fun than complexity, and so I think they cut out some of because think about the mechanic of the worlds within worlds, that could get like really mind bending.
Oh yeah.
But again, we would be talking about a very different game if that were the case, and I'm glad that they scaled it back. So I do agree with you. But yeah, I just the synergy of it's just simplicity in design, and I just think as a puzzle game, it's the perfect length. It's great at communicating puzzles. It drip feeds it in an interesting way. It gives you enough of a story in my opinion to where you can kind of connect ideas, and I'm satisfied with that. And I hope the next game does not take 6.5 years to make. And where the fuck is Playdead's third game?
Well, isn't Playdead doing like a 3D game? Like they're trying to. I don't know if it's going to be a 2D platform.
I hope this isn't like the Hyperlight Drifter devs deal, because the game that came out after that was overly ambitious, and I think it just annoyed the shit out of me. I forgot the name of it. And now they're doing a roguelite. It's like, what the fuck?
No,
just make a 2D game.
Stop trying to catch those stupid white. I'm done with roguelites.
Please.
I don't mind the OGs doing it, but I don't want everyone else trying to hand it. I'm like, no. You stay in your lane. Stick to what you're good at, please. You make the games I want to make, and then I won't buy them anyway. And then you'll inevitably go bankrupt.
Because we'll be on Game Pass.
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So Cocoon. So go on. Did you have something?
Oh no,
there,
I just come on now. I was gonna say hand in pocket, but
there we go.
I shouldn't say that, because I'm not putting hand in pocket. I only come on the show I listen every week and come on it every 2 years, and we'll see. See, the thing is, I don't want to create like kind of a I would have to stipulate that I'm a patron, and then no one would believe anything I say. So
yeah, it'd be a shill. You're keeping yourself independent. That's the way to do it. Hand in pocket. Here we go then. Cocoon. We got the gaming gallery. You got several ways to rank it. You'll be going in the guest of honor, because McWomble. I don't know if he is the master of pixel points. He certainly thinks he is. I believe he thinks he's the leader of it all. But he came along and did Midnight Suns, and officially opened the guest of honor exhibition in the gaming gallery. So you've got platinum, gold, silver and bronze if you wish to reward it with any of those ranks or accolades. But we've also got the botchling bin, which is for all the toot. So for some reason I get this isn't going to be utilised here, but it is there as an option if you want to just punish the game for doing something bad, or if it's just a game that you perhaps didn't enjoy. Perhaps that's where a Somerville might have ended up in another life. But that is there as an option if you don't think the game met your kind of standards, or you enjoyed it as much as you perhaps thought you would have done. So this is a big moment. Cocoon, where would you like to place it among the platinum, the golds, the silvers, and the bronzes of the gaming gallery?
Can I put Sonic Superstars in the botulism bin? What did you call it?
The botulism bin. It's a creature from it's a creature from The Witcher. It's horrendous. If you look it up, it's a horrendous idea. But
okay, I know that name now.
Yeah.
I don't. When I see, I'll look up a picture of it later.
Yeah.
I'll put Cocoon
Sonic.
at a gold.
Lovely, a glorious gold.
I just think, yeah, it's not quite there. For a platinum, something like Inside is a platinum. It had like, as you were saying, just you couldn't establish like the atmosphere of the game maybe didn't hit as much for you, and if you compare it to something like Inside, not to say that we have to, simply because
the
game designer started his own studio or whatever, but you're inevitably going to make those comparisons.
Yeah,
I guess it didn't. I was satisfied with it, but yeah, it didn't like hit in the same way. The ending didn't hit in the same way. The final puzzle of the game I thought was very, very clever, and I was very satisfied with that. But if you want to wrap that in the atmosphere, it's something we're just used to from Playdead, even though their output is so small. It just doesn't hit that upper echelon. But like, as in terms of one of my favorite games of the year, it definitely is. So it has to get a gold. It can't get a silver.
Lovely. I'm going to give it a silver. And I echo a lot of your sentiments, and I really did enjoy it. I've been really harsh this year. I've barely put anything at gold. In fact, I'm looking at it. I've only put Resident Evil 4 there, the remake, which I just love.
As a gold?
Yeah, that's the only thing. So this is actually in the higher part of the...
What did you put Final Fantasy 16 as?
Silver, which...
I would go silver as well.
Yeah, I really did enjoy that game. But it's got in its way too much. The performance wasn't great either. And, I could do another hour on Final Fantasy 16. But I think if I played it on the PS5 Pro, and let's say it was completely smooth and whatnot, it would have more of a chance. But I got really frustrated with the side content, which was a self-inflicted wound, admittedly. I didn't have to do it all.
I don't know, though, because all of it is bad. I'm not even kidding. 99.9% of the side content in that game is fucking awful. And I don't even I'm a big dummy. I'm an Apple person. I have a MacBook. I know nothing about technical stuff. I didn't have an issue with any of the performance stuff, but the side shit in that game was so awful. I hated it, genuinely hated it. It's so bad that it just put everything down. So
that's fair enough.
It could have been a gold. A gold becomes a silver, probably.
Yeah, I mean, they should have done Moon Ancestors. That's the lesson of this, isn't it? If you're going to do side content, do some Moon Ancestors to let off into the atmosphere.
The 3 seconds it finds to take a Moon Ancestor is better than any fucking side quest in Final Fantasy 16.
Absolutely, but yeah, I'm just being a bit of a grump this year, and but Cocoon Silver's still very solid. As I always say, people slag off the bronze category. I'm like, no. Bronze is good. You just don't want to be in that botchling bin. That's where you don't want to be. You don't want to be lurking in there with new Pokemon Snap and other dog shit that's come out. And all the Assassin's Creed Valhalla DLCs, they're all in there.
Yeah, I was riding the wave of nostalgia when me and Tony Johnson played the original Pokemon Snap start to finish one night. We didn't sleep. I bought the the Switch game day of, and holy shit, is that game terrible. That was a huge mistake.
Yeah,
never again.
Some games don't age well, do they? New Pokemon Snap. No. Just the idea of that game, what you're doing, probably you think, as an adult, that's not as interesting as I once thought. But a lovely gold for Cocoon in the guest of honor, and I've given it a silver. A very solid game. I recommend the game if you're into your puzzle games. And you have to come along for the ride for that, because it is an out and out puzzler at heart. And but it'll make you feel smart for the most part. I would anticipate. Yes, you'll struggle at times, but every game you're going to struggle. So Cocoon itself, great job from Geometric Interactive. What a great debut that is. And I guess we'll see their next game in 10 years or something, and we can come back on and talk about... Turns out it's Cocoon 2, and we're like, oh, okay, I'm up for more Cocoon, but because you guys have not done something new... Again, we're asking them to be played it, aren't we? We're like, don't do Limbo 2, do Inside. And
I think I don't want to see a Cocoon 2 as much as I don't want to see a Spider-Man 3. I think the idea is great, but please try something different.
No, but great job. Overall, really enjoyable game.
Yep.
As I said, palette cleanser territory, not overly long, really lean, but in a good way. And it might improve your IQ, so absolutely give it a go if you've got access to it, or buy it outright on your PlayStation, your Switch, your PC, your PS4, whatever you might have. But it is there on Game Pass at present for you to play. Right, I'm going to wrap it up, Evan. Thanks for attending and joining this. I thought it would be an interesting chat, and it was indeed. I'm sure the audience will enjoy it. And we'll get you back on another time for another game, because you're pretty prolific when it comes to beating out games. So, and you tend to play some things off the beaten path. So I do want to get you back on for other games in the future, if of course you're willing to.
Oh, definitely. I'll bring Gozer on next time. She got her third vaccination today, so she's kind of
KO'd.
She looks like she's passed out. Yeah, she's KO'd in the crate. But yeah, I'll be on.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Right, thanks for your time, and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.